Tack till Martin och Anna och inte minst för alla fantastiska exempel på hur kulturen också kan användas i protesterna på gatorna i Belarus. Också den digitala tekniken ger nya möjligheter för fri journalistik och också för civilsamhället i stort. Och vi kommer nu att få lyssna till röster från Ukraina och Belarus kring hur just digitala verktyg har påverkat proteströrelserna och den politiska utvecklingen i de båda länderna. Så welcome to Globala torget, Alina Zubkovic from Nordic Ukraine Forum.
Greetings from Stockholm. Thank you very much, guests and our dear participants, to be now online with us. We are starting the panel on disinformation and media freedom. We will talk today on the case of Belarus and Ukraine, and particularly on the way how social media have impacted on the protest potential and protest mobilization. But before we start, I will introduce our dear guests, Dr. Ryhor Astapenia and Dr. Ilona Sologub. So Dr. Ryhor Astapenia is a founder and a researcher director of the Center for New Ideas, a Minsk-based think tank promoting democratic reforms in Belarus. He is also a Robert Bosch Stephen Academy Fellow at Chatham House and an independent policy institute based in London. Ryhor has received his PhD in political science in University of Warsaw. Our second guest, Ilona, is the CEO and editor of Vox Ukraine. That is an analytical center that promotes modern economic knowledge and economic literacy. She publishes articles on up-to-date economic developments, analyzes data and run a fact-checking project, which we will be talking about later. Ilona Sologub previously worked as an analyst at the Kyiv School of Economics and a commercial bank. She has over 15 years of professional experience. So I'm very glad that your dear guests were able to participate today with us, and I would like to rush into the questions to you because we don't have that much time. And my first question would be to Ryhor. I would like to ask you about the phenomena that we're talking now a lot about, which is the impact of the social media on the protests. A lot of people say that now it's happening the Telegram revolution in Belarus. So my question is, to what extent do you think the new social media have influenced their protest mobilization, and to what extent can we say that it is the result of existence of the social media? One.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. Just before I will jump in to praise the role of digital solutions and media, I just would like to make a disclaimer. This revolution is not about Telegram or digital tools. Roots of what is happening right now is actually much deeper. And in a way, I can spend hours talking about them. But let me just mention a few reasons why Lukashenko is very unpopular and why the protest movement is so assertive. Actually, Belarusian economy was stagnating for the last 10 years. And so many people were very angry about their level of life and about the dire economic situation. The second reason is that actually Lukashenko ignored the COVID pandemic, and during the pandemic, many Belarusian citizens feeling that the state couldn't care less about the well-being of ordinary citizens. As people become tired of Lukashenko, that created a high demand for new actors in politics. And these new actors, as Viktor Babarika, as Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, and many others appeared. And despite all their shortages, they become very popular because people just wanted to see an alternative to Lukashenko. And as that became obvious to the majority of Belarusians that they would like to get rid of Lukashenko, people were shocked by the level of falsifications during the election. And after the brutal dispersal of protests on the 9th of August, 10th of August, 11th of August, people were shocked by tortures in prisons and, of course, by murders on the streets. So now people believe that if they retreat now, tomorrow the whole country will turn into just one huge concentration camp. That is why people just think that they have to win to prevent this from turning to reality. So Belarus protests have the same nature as protests elsewhere. They are about broken social contract between the state and the society, about human rights violations, about dignity of the nation. And that is why all digital solutions and media were just tools that people used to and use right now to express their views. Moreover, studies of our protests show that actually many people still rely on word of mouth, and many people joined the protests after only seeing protesters on the streets. So now I can finally start talking about how helpful digital solutions and media were during the protests and how helpful they are right now. The first thing is, of course, Telegram. It is better than other messengers because it allows a high degree of anonymity, and it works better with unstable internet service. And protests right now are coordinated by Telegram channels whose administrators are based in Warsaw, and the main channel has more than 2 million subscribers, including the most active protesters. Just to put in context, Belarus has a population of just 9 million people. So 2 million people is a very huge number in case of Belarus. So basically, the only opportunity for the Lukashenko's regime to interrupt communication between protesters and these Telegram channels is just to shut down the whole internet. And this is the reason why actually Lukashenko's regime now and then shuts down the internet. I guess you heard that actually almost every evening the Lukashenko's regime shut down the internet in Minsk. I mean right now about the mobile internet because, well, in flats it's usually working. The second thing which was very useful during the presidential campaign is the online platform vote, Golos, which was launched by Belarus IT specialists. And this platform has more than 1 million users. And it was designed with the hope to counteract the election falsification, at least to some extent, and provide some kind of accountability. The voters were supposed to take a photo of their ballots and send it to online server that would compare the ballots with the official results. And even though this online system did not cover the majority of voters, it appeared to be very successful to show the differences between official results and photos of ballots that people sent to the online platform. Moreover, this platform, Golos, is still developing, and I guess that the next update will be devoted to the idea of developing a new constitution of Belarus. The next thing is crowdfunding. Two Belarusian crowdfunding platforms were actually banned at the beginning of the presidential campaign. But at the same time, many people still have many tools to crowdfund on Facebook, on PayPal, just to send money to each other, but just to share their card details on internet. So this crowdfunding in general became very useful so that people can help each other. And in general, I just would like to stress that actually the whole campaign right now in Belarus, the presidential campaign and what is happening right now, everything this is very crowdsourced. And it has both advantages and disadvantages. A disadvantage is the absence of political leadership. That creates a wide field for provocation or miscommunication between different parts of the protest movement. And an advantage is that actually the non-existent political leaders cannot be arrested, and people find new ways to organize and to evolve the form of protest without any direction from above. This form, or crowdsourced form, when many people just develop their own initiatives, this form of protest seems to be the most sustainable in long term, considering current circumstances. To sum up, I think it's important to say that thanks to digital solutions, democratic movement succeeded to create the communication system that works despite repressions from the regime. And thanks to Golos, to the online platform Vote, democratic movement succeeded to prove that the election was actually stolen from Belarusians. And many crowdfunding platforms helped to create a system of solidarity when people can quickly help each other financially, and that is why repressions from the regime, of course, they of course have some impact on people, but at the same time, this impact is decreased thanks to solidarity among people, which become very widespread during these digital solutions.
Thank you very much, Rehor, for clarifying this issue and as well as bringing the broader picture on the ongoing protest. I have the similar question to Ilona. Ilona, what's the impact of social media in regard to the protests in Ukraine? I mean, the previous one during the Maidan revolution, as well as what are the impact of this new social media like Instagram to the electoral mobilization, because there were a number of articles claiming that Zelensky was instrumental in bringing newer generations to elect him via their social media such as Instagram. So do you think this can be proved statistically somehow, and do you think it is actually a very valuable tool for the protest mobilization in Ukraine?
Thank you for the question, Eileen. I would like to greet everyone who is listening to us. I would like to support what Rehor just said, because revolutions happen when people are not satisfied with how things are going, and then they will find means of communication from the available solutions. You can remember that Bolsheviks in 1917 captured first mail and telegraph. So during Maidan in 2004, Ukrainians were organized by online media and TV. There were some TV channels that extensively covered the Maidan. During 2014, Facebook was mostly used. There were large groups on Facebook that helped to organize protests, but this was also covered on TV and by some online media. So the main thing is whether people are ready to go and to contribute personally to the revolution, rather than whether they are participating in some social networks or not. As for the you could find during the Maidan in 2014, you could find just such forms of organization, like people were standing near the hospitals where the ambulances brought people who were wounded, and then doctor came out and said, we need this, this, and this, and people just collected cash between themselves and bought whatever they asked, whatever doctors asked. So this is like one form of organization that doesn't need any Facebook or whatever social network. As for the Zelensky campaign, I think the significance of social media is also quite exaggerated here. I read interviews of some of his team saying that we were like very novel here and we exploited social media, but I believe that this is more their wishful thinking rather than the real state of the art, because Zelensky was present on TV for like 20 years before 2014. So it was very recognizable face, recognized all over the country among all types of people. And I looked at the results of exit polls. So after the first tour, yes, you could say that 50% of Zelensky voters were younger than 30. But in the second tour, the voters of Poroshenko and Zelensky were quite similar. If you look at age profile, education, even regional profile, there were differences, but really not that big differences. So this was rather in the second tour. There was a protest voting, which attracted many people from different backgrounds. I think that apart from this media presence on TV and bringing to people positive emotions because he was a comedian, another part of the winning strategy of Zelensky was that he didn't promise anything specific to people, like telling very general and very good ideas that I will bring peace, I will bring welfare, etc. And so everyone imagined what he wanted. And according to also those exit polls, Zelensky voters were divided approximately equally between those who supported Ukraine joining NATO and those who didn't support it, between those who liked Russia and those who didn't like Russia, and so on. So very different people with very different political views voted for him. And our organization performed one survey in March 2019, even before the elections, and we saw that both Poroshenko and Zelensky voters had very similar political beliefs. So most of Ukrainians are, if you look at political compass, they tend to be paternalistic, believing in state intervention, and rather left. And this doesn't depend on their electoral preferences.
Thank you very much for the very interesting overview. Now I have a question to Rehor. Can you please share your thoughts on the future development of the protest in regards to the internet, to the social media, and generally your impression of what will be happening with the protest during this month and further?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Well, actually, it would be pretty naive to think that we can understand or predict the revolution when you have so many actors with so different agendas in such a chaotic environment. And so I can speak more about positions of main actors, of protesters, of political democratic movement, of the regime, and of course of the international community. The protest is still massive, and it is going deeper. And some parents, for example, take their children from the schools where the elections were falsified. People organize rallies in their courtyards. Right now, what is very interesting is that actually people create chats of their courtyards on Telegram. So this level of horizontal communication is very unique in case of Belarus, because actually people even didn't know each other when they were living in their courtyard. But right now, the whole situation actually forced people, helped people to unite and to create some new tools for communication between themselves. And in general, people see what is happening right now not just like a political crisis. It feels, it feels like a war. And when you have the occupation force and when you have the nation. That is why I think that actually many people will be very assertive in their willingness to protest in the future. If we speak about democratic political actors who should be leading the protests, they exist in a very chaotic way right now. Many leaders are in prisons, and the minorities outside the country, offices are arrested. So basically, ways of usual communication between the political actors, these ways are disrupted. And well, there are no Telegram, in prisons, so it's very difficult for these people to communicate with the outside world. So the room for usual political activities is pretty small, and that is why I think that political actors will need some time to reorganize their activities. The third actor is, of course, the regime, and its position is pretty simple, to do whatever it takes to stay in power. I guess some people saw videos from yesterday's protests and brutal actions of the police, and it seems very likely that brutal activities will continue. And but at the same time, Lukashenko's regime lost its legitimacy in the eyes of many Belarusians, and some officials leave the regime, and economic situation is dire. So I do not think that regime is sustainable in the long term. And finally, the fourth actor is the international community. On the one hand, we have Russia, which limitedly supports Lukashenko. Without this support, Lukashenko's regime could not exist. And on the other hand, we have the West, which limitedly supports the democratic movement. But at the same time, the West doesn't want to be significantly involved in Belarusian political crisis because it believes that actually Belarus belongs to the Russia's sphere of influence. That's why they just don't want to act independently without acceptance from Russia. So taking into account all these positions, I do not expect that this political crisis will end soon. And unfortunately, it will take a few months for Belarusian society to go through all repressions before Belarusian society can get rid of Lukashenko.
Yeah. And I think it will be very true to say that there are a lot of supporters of free and democratic Belarus among our online guests, and a lot of them hope to see the best solutions coming out of the protests. My final question would be to Ilona. Since you are also their leader of fact-checking project at Vox Ukraine, can you please share with us in 2 or 3 minutes that we left ideas on the project? So are this project still in demand, and who is the target audience for you?
Well, we target all the people who are interested in truth, but we actually understand that we cannot impact much what politicians say. And if you are asking about who demands this fact-checking project, well, this is hard to say. Probably we do this for ourselves. But recently we found that one study by Sergei Guriev and co-authors who say that when people see a fact-check statement and fact-checkers say that this is not true, they are less likely to share this statement on social media. So, and also when they need to make 2 or 3 clicks to share, they are less likely to share that as well. So at least it is scientifically proven that fact-checking reduces proliferation of so-called alternative facts, which are really lies. So this is like our motivation is mostly from the inside, that we would like to see the politics cleaner, and we would like to have voters think about what they select, what they choose, rather than to vote with the emotions. And sometimes we get feedback from politicians who say, "You really cut me," then I was wrong. Yeah, I can explain. Sometimes they say, of course, more often they say, "No, you are wrong. You are working for someone. I don't know, for CIA." But yeah, there is a feedback. At least people know that there is someone there who can check what they say.
And a small clarification, is the website also available in English or it's only in Ukrainian?
Sometimes we translate our analytical articles into English, but it's mostly in Ukrainian because I don't think that international audience is interested in the lies of our politicians, because you have your own politicians.
Well, or it is a good start to start in studying Ukrainian. Okay, Diego, thank you very much for your fantastic contribution. It was a very interesting conversation, and as it happens with interesting conversation, they pass quickly. So thank you for being with us, and thank you very much, audience, for being online.